Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the American Organists Book Club, hosted by the Boston chapter of the AGO. My name is Sean Glennon. I'm an at-large member of the executive committee for our chapter, and I'm thrilled to be the moderator for tonight's presentation, which is the second and final installment in a two-part series called Emerging Paths to a Successful Future for the Organ. If you missed part one last week, I would encourage you to check it out on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@BostonAGO. The channel includes past episodes of our book club as well as virtual recitals and other engaging and informative videos. I want to recognize our Dean, Kathy Meyer, our Sub-Dean, Jeffrey Mills, who's on the program tonight. Jeffrey is also the chair of our program committee, which has developed a phenomenal series of programs this year. Upcoming events in the chapter include a family Halloween concert on October 25th at the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Boston, an organ crawl called the Hidden Organs of Harvard Square on November 8th with the incomparable Jonathan Ambrosino, a hymn festival on November 21st at Old South in Boston, and the annual First Night recital on December 31st at the First Church of Christ Scientist, aka the Mother Church. Please visit our new and improved website at bostonago.org for more details. Back to tonight's presentation on emerging paths to a successful future for the organ. The impetus for this discussion is based on a series of articles written by Randy Steere for the American Organist entitled A Time for Optimism. Randy is the Dean of the Worcester AGO chapter, Treasurer of the Merrimack AGO chapter, a trustee of the Methuen Memorial Music Hall, and is actively involved in the Groton Hill Music Center, where he'll be performing on November 15th. On a personal level, I want to thank Randy for his guidance and support to me as a member of AGO. I've reached out to him on a number of occasions for advice, and he has always been extremely responsive and helpful. Before I turn it over to Randy, I just want to mention that the Q&A and the chat will be open during the discussion, or the presentation rather. Randy will allow time for questions at the end, but if you have a burning question or comment that you want to add to the feed at any time, please do so, and we'll address those as soon as possible. I would also ask everyone to please mute themselves when not speaking as a courtesy to others. And also, if you're not already in speaker view as opposed to gallery view, I would encourage you to change your settings by clicking View at the top of your screen and changing to speaker view. And with that, thank you all again for joining us. Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for part two of our series. This is what everyone wants to know about, suggestions and thoughts for how we move forward and proceed with our situation. And I have a whole boatload of ideas for you tonight, both for chapters and for individuals. In the process, I'm going to mention some things that we're trying this year with the Worcester chapter, but I know Boston and Western Massachusetts and Merrimack Valley are all doing things as well. I don't mean to slight any of that, so if you want to add to the list and put your thoughts, just feel free to do that in the chat. But obviously I know more about Worcester than the other chapters at this point. I want to also thank Kathy and Jeffrey and the Boston AGO for giving me this opportunity. And thanks to Sean for moderating tonight's session. We've already been very helpful. We got our microphones straightened out, so this is great. If you didn't attend last week, I want to reiterate what Sean said and definitely encourage you to do so. There are a lot of concepts and ideas in the first session that I'm just going to assume you know about tonight. I don't have time to review all of it, but don't assume you just know the definitions of things that I'm talking about. It would be very helpful for you to take a look at that presentation. I also want to just apologize in advance fairly quickly. I'm going to be doing mainly PowerPoint slides tonight, as opposed to just talking to you, which is mostly what I did last week. But I think you're going to want to see the lists of ideas rather than just listening to me say them and trying to write things down or whatever. So I will go ahead and do that. And as Sean said, we'll have time for questions at the end. So I am going to share my screen and we're going to jump right into it. And you should all see the screen now, which is good. So let's get started. So just 5 minutes to sort of pick up from where we left off last week. In the big picture of things, last week I discussed what I believe that we are in the latest cycle of a series of cycles or waves, and that this is us over here coming off of the last crest and moving. There we go, and moving up to the next crest. So that's what I want to talk about tonight with the ideas. But to follow through, if this is the blow up of that particular cycle, it's important, I think, to just see the three stages that I've outlined. Uh, Most of the people in my generation are just coming off of the last crest, and we tended to resist and reject what was going on, what the new was, because we were trying to cling to the last crest. But then if you come down a few generations, we have people who are born into the environment around us that are more accepting and adopting of what's going on today. And then where I think we're heading right now is people who are the latest generation, youngest generation, that have really mastered and are flourishing in the new environment. So a quick example of that, I remember in the old days with WebExes, and I actually refused to turn the camera on when I did a WebEx because I thought it was too distracting. And you could see my screen, but it was just like talking on the telephone, and why did you need to have a camera? And then, of course, we came down and quickly adopted the use of cameras, and COVID certainly helped all of that, and we came very good with Zoom and everything. But now, today's generation, it's well beyond Zoom and WebEx with YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all the apps, and they are just so used to today's environment. And so that's sort of the three cycles in a nutshell with that one example. I also left you last week with this cliffhanger. I used this portrait a lot last week, and all around the outside, the environment that we're in, and all of the influences in that environment, and how do we fill in the slate here, and how do we develop as musicians to move forward given that environment. So you can go back and listen to all that last week, and then I also left you with this quick summary. The only real takeaway I want right now is to highlight the importance for today to distinguish between the science of music and the experience of music. And sort of everything else can derive from that distinction. And I left you with the cliffhanger of how can we bridge this gap. And the way to bridge that is through what I believe to be an accessible music. And I gave you this definition of accessible music. And I'm going to sort of assume that you took that all in, but it's very important for the discussion to realize that accessible music can be any music. It's not limited to either emotional or intellectual, etc., or complex or simple, but there are definite things that make accessible music. So with that background, we're going to pick it up from there. And I have a couple of general goals that I want to put out there. And then what I'm going to do is go through every area that we find the organ, starting with the church, and talk about ideas of how I see this moving forward and what would help as we move forward. So generally, if we are in a populist environment, which we most definitely are, and an emotional environment, depending, differentiating between intellectual and emotional points of view, obviously we want to have a populist message. Now, it's well established that music has swung between emotion and intellect down through history, but I think it's very clearly on the emotional side of things now. So whatever it is that we choose to play, however, I think the overarching need is that it needs to be accessible, which sort of bridges the gap between these different poles. And we really need to help each other understand what that means. And hopefully maybe we can get into a discussion of this a little more. I tried to get into it some last week, but I think it's all too easy for us to fall back on our musical education and sort of forget the what accessible might be and what the non-trained musical ear actually hears. Um, so when we talk about music to the general audience, I think it's important to talk about it on an emotional basis, on a musical experience basis. So I always like to say, what's the single emotion that describes a piece? And can you verbalize what that emotion is? And if you can't pick an emotion, then that piece may not be very accessible today, because certainly if we have pieces that are emotionless, meaning they're sort of flatline and don't evoke a lot of emotion, that's probably not what we're looking for at the moment. And then also to ask yourself why you like or why you chose a piece. You know, if I chose the piece because the text happens to be the readings for the day, or I chose the piece because, as an example that I gave last week, the composer transformed the melody in ways to make it totally unrecognizable, and I admire that transformation. Um, those are very scientific reasons for liking a piece, and they're going to be very foreign to non-educated, musically educated ears. So we should be saying why we like the piece from the point of view of the musical experience. This piece is very exciting, very lively, very meditative, and those words typically tend to be emotional in nature. And then it's important to listen to the feedback of the ordinary person. And this is so important. Do they agree with your assessment? And I want to talk about this for just a few minutes. And the example I have is meteorology. You know, here in New England, they say, oh, there's a blizzard coming tomorrow, and everyone cancels school. And then what happens when there's only a half an inch of snow that shows up? Well, you kind of blow your credibility and your trust, because what you said people were going to experience isn't what they actually experienced. And we can all understand why that might happen. But the same is true of music. If they say you're just going to love this concert and all of this music is so good, and then they come, but it's a total dud. From a non-musical point of view, they don't feel particularly excited about the program at all, then we tend to lose the credibility next time we ask someone to come to a concert. So I like to use my husband as an example. So my husband, Paul, we go to the Vista Philharmonic. We have the season subscription to that, and we just went to the concert last weekend. And I always ask him on the drive home what he thought of the concert before I say a word. I just want to get his reaction. And it's always interesting to get his reaction in totally non-musical terms. And this last concert, there was a cello concerto, saw a cello concerto, which was absolutely fabulous as part of the first half that we both loved. And the second half was Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. And if you know that, that has that beautiful third movement that everyone knows. But every single movement is quite long. It's a very long symphony. And there were about 1,000 people in the hall. It was packed. And about 100 of them, I would estimate, clapped between each of the movements. And it was always interesting to get the reaction because, the director didn't turn around with a scowl on his face and sort of stare everyone down to say, why are you clapping? He just let them clap. And you could see some of the people in the orchestra smiling, and they were happy that people liked it and didn't have any problem. And so that happened between each of the four movements. And on the way back, Paul said, I didn't hear any relationship of one movement to the other in that piece. To me, it was just four different pieces being played. And that's kind of very interesting because, why do we tell people not to clap in between movements? We might have played the third movement alone and had people clap at the end of it if that was the only thing on the program. So it's just interesting to get a non-musical feedback and what people are thinking. And these movements were long enough that you could think they were the entire piece, quite frankly. So anyway, I think it's important to get feedback from non-musicians and see whether it agrees with what you told them and what you said the piece was going to be. And that's a good way to see whether there's a connection there just how accurate you're being with how other people view the music that we're playing. And then other goals, I think we need to do more freshly composed music, just like clothes and automobiles and haircuts. You can tell when something seems outdated and it has that outdated and old feel and look to it. And if we want to be more relevant, I think we need to be playing more of the more current familiar hymn tunes and arrangements and not try to always play older music. These are just general things. And last but not least, as I said last week, what I found in every single wave is that all of the musicians always made the best of what environment they're in. Whatever the influences they have, they started from there and they built upon that, and that's what leads to the crest. And we need to always think about that. Whatever we're asked to do, we should make it the most musical and the best that we can, with an eye on long-term improvement. It may not be where we want to be now, but you have to start engaging people where they're at, and then you can grow from there. And I think those are all good sort of general goals out of all of this. So having said that, let's start with the church. I didn't really want to start with the church, but I know you're all interested mainly in this. And the church is the hardest one to start with. There is so much baggage going on, and the organ is so closely tied to the church, and it's not really doing a good job of solving its problems. So the image of the church organ is very poor, unfortunately. So that's why it's the hardest category. It's what we've known for so long. And it's going to take the longest to thrive. I do have ideas, so don't worry, I'm not copping out here. I've got lots of ideas. But it is going to take the longest, and my theory is that the organ is going to have to thrive outside of the church first, and then that outside influence will come back in and develop inside the church. We'll see if that actually comes true and whether it comes true in my lifetime, but that's my theory on this. But we are going to go ahead and see what we can do to improve the situation. And in my mind, the biggest thing is we need to do a new image. We need to create a new image for the organ in the church and show people what the organ really can be. So I have a variety of slides on that. And as I said last week, in all of the other cycles, hymns really led the way in the church. Whether that be the Reformation or the gospel hymns or whatever, it's all about getting people singing and involved in music, and hymns are the way to do that. So today's hymns, many people don't like because they're folk tune based or rock based or jazz based or whatever, and they're difficult to play on the organ. They have rhythms that are difficult to play. Sounds very much like the early Reformation days, I pointed out last week. But I think we need to embrace those hymns rather than run the other way from them. And that will go a long way to helping us. So in Worcester this year, we're going to build a list of difficult hymns to play. What are all these hymns that we find so hard that we just run to the piano and play them on the piano instead? And we're going to see what we can do with them, maybe create reasonable accompaniments for them so all of us don't have to start from scratch and figure it out on our own. There are some people that aren't comfortable doing that. And maybe resolve some of the rhythmic problems, and just as happened in the Reformation, and smooth some of them out. There are other resources for simple accompaniments. We could create a list of those. And then we can include them, do preludes and postludes on them, improvise on them, choral anthems on these hymns. Do what musicians have done over the years and take a hymn tune and make the best of it. And it keeps on improving. So there's a lot that we could do on the new hymns if we simply embrace it and turn around and make music out of it, rather than run the other way. So as I say here, take what we hate and turn it into something we love. And why don't we have a workshop on the difficult hymns once we do that and help people learn how to play some of these on the organ? And then we should get back to letting the congregation choose their favorite hymns and take a survey to figure out what their favorite hymns are. So I think hymns is an area that we can do a lot to improve our image and to push the organ forward. And then professional development opportunities. As J.W. Arnold said in the Merrimack mini convention last year, the vast majority of AGO members are not experts with master's degrees. It used to be that way a little bit, but not anymore. So we need to do a lot more to help our own members. So this year in Worcester, we're doing free master classes with a couple of leaders, and people can sign up for 30-minute sessions. We're doing 4 30-minute sessions, so a 2-hour master class. And they can say what they want to work on when they sign up for it. Maybe they want to work on hymn playing or service playing, or they want to get some feedback on a piece they're learning or something. Whatever it is, they'll sign up, and if the leader will know what they want to do and can either take on that or pass it on to someone who's a little better at it. And we'll see how that goes. Just an opportunity to let the members have a one-on-one session, and maybe won't be so intimidating and might lead to other lessons and things. So we also want to welcome and mentor the new organists. And you can have workshops on all kinds of topics. We're used to doing this. That can certainly grow and expand from there. One topic in particular I think I haven't seen much on is a workshop on being pastoral in our churches, and how we as organists can do a better job of relating to the choirs and the congregation. And then another idea is a new fresh repertoire. So we could have a repertoire club, just like you have a Boston book club, Boston AGO book club, and get a bunch of people who are willing to learn pieces in the repertoire and choose a collection or a group of pieces each season, for instance. John Dixon, Paul Fye, Leopold, Organist Companion, these are obviously geared towards less difficult, accessible music, and have people learn them. And then you could do a lot with it. Bring in an outside person, maybe the composer, to lead a master class on them. Compare your interpretations within the group. A couple of people learn the same piece. Discuss how accessible they are, what their emotion experiential scale is. But that's a good way of expanding music in the church. We did a survey this summer in Worcester, and one of the top things that came back was, I need to find new repertoire. I need fresh repertoire that I don't know. And this is a way to share that and to do it as a group, and to just push that forward. Could also have a diverse committee of people, and deliberately diverse, that would select music for different seasons and themes. And then I want to make a big thing about transcriptions. The transcriptions from orchestra are beginning to be accepted a lot more. And if you remember, people used to listen to the orchestra a lot, and so the transcriptions made sense because that was their favorite pieces that we were playing on the organ. And that's fine, we can do that today, especially in the concert halls when we get there. I've got this in there as well, where you've got people who are orchestra goers. They would be very happy with transcriptions. But today's favorite things that everyone hears are the movie soundtracks. And so the transcriptions for today should also include the favorite movies and the soundtracks from those movies. And you really can't argue with John Williams and a few others. There are some great composers out there doing soundtracks. And of course, Anna Lapwood has done that in a bigger way, and has been really very successful bringing people into the organ through those transcriptions. And that's exactly what happened in the old days as well. And I think we need to simply modernize that and once again embrace it rather than fight it. Become more relevant. I remember right after 9/11 when all the churches, not all the churches, many of the churches in Boston were open, and we were playing organ music, and people could come in and meditate and sort of process what happened. Well, why don't we just do that generally? We don't need a 9/11 for that. And you could simply have an open time when you offered free organ music for a half an hour or 45 minutes. And of course, when I was putting this together, I immediately went to the dark side, well, meditation and grieving, etc. But why not have 45 minutes of very exciting, happy music, organ music, that will get people very excited and going out in a happy way. So there's a lot that could be done with that and could be a real service to the community, depending on what the community is. A noontime concert or an early evening concert or something on a regular basis, once a month, once a week, whatever, occasionally. But it's a way to get the organ in front of people again and make it relevant, maybe by giving it a theme or something that people would want to come to listen to. Then this is a big one, train the pianists. This is my favorite one at the moment. So a pet peeve of mine has been, we have all of these pianists playing in churches, and I quite frankly hear a lot of organists that sort of put that all down and complain. And of course, one of the reasons they're playing is because we don't have enough organists, so it's our own fault. And most of these pianists are piano teachers, or some are quite accomplished, and they do it for the extra money, which is fine. A lot of us do it for the extra money too. But we don't have many of them in our AGO chapter. So I started a project, and I'm very proud to say that we have 2 groups going, group lessons of pianists that play in churches. And I have 10 in one group, and I have 5 in the other group. So I now have 15 pianists that are learning how to take their knowledge on the piano and apply it to the organ. And 5 of them have started doing private lessons in addition to that. And it's, I think, a very successful thing. None of them are AGO members yet. So conceivably, I'm going to add 15 new members to the Worcester AGO in the course of the year. And the group sessions work out well. We do it every other week because these are all adults with busy schedules. So we take that into account. 1 or 2 of them have gotten scholarships for their lessons. We made them friends of the chapter, so they get the newsletter. They're welcome to attend all of our events. And we basically want to welcome them in and get them as members of the AGO. But the really important kicker is what's in bold there. I asked each one of them how they were faring in their churches. And to every single one of them, their church has encouraged them, and in fact, some of them have kind of pressured them to play the organ more. So the churches are not hiring pianists as a way of not having the organist. Churches are recognizing that the organ is more important and is very necessary over the piano, and they want the pianist to play the organ more. And we should take that in a very positive note. I think most of us simply assume that the pianists are replacing the organist, and the churches would rather have a pianist rather than an organist. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think it might be originally when they hire a pianist, but I think the case now is that churches are recognizing that they really need the organ to support hymn singing and everything. So I think this has a lot of potential to really transform the AGO and the organ and bring people back into the fold and to turn all of these pianists into organists. May take a few years. I'm sure it will take a few years. As I tell them, they didn't learn the piano overnight, and the organ is enough different. So they need to be patient. But the other big thing here is that if these are piano students, they all have, the piano teachers, they all have students. And what are we looking for with pedals, pipes, and pizzas and everything else? We're looking for pianists that we want to expose to the organ. And if all of these piano teachers are much more adept at playing the organ, they're going to be much more likely to introduce their students to the organ. And in fact, that has happened. One of the people in my group is a piano teacher that brought her students over to the Methuen Music Hall Open Console last year. And I arranged that with her, and they each played a piece on the concert grand piano that had just been rebuilt there, and then they played the same piece on the organ. And they were just delighted. And out of that, one of them was it could have been more than one, but at least one of them was an adult. And that adult is now in my second group, learning how to play the organ. So there's a lot of benefits all around from doing this. One of the ways I found pianists, I'll talk about more of that in a minute, but as I advertised in NEPTO, the New England Piano Teachers Association. I just put a little blurb in, they put it in for free, and I got 5 of these pianists through that blurb. So there's a lot of potential in training the pianists. Obviously, get children and youth involved. You all know about all of this. I don't have to say too much, other than if there are some that play the piano, obviously you want to talk with them about exploring the organ and take advantage of that and get them playing in church. But the big one I want to highlight is right in the middle, the use of children's stories. That's another little pet peeve of mine, or not a peeve, but a pet thing. I think we don't use children's stories, whatever you call it in your church, time for all ages, whatever it is. Um, we can be doing stories about the music program, and that's a good way to educate the adults and the children. I've done quite a few of them. We dedicated one of our first Thursday lunches to people bringing their children's stories and talking about them. Uh, and we could have a workshop to share children's stories and how help people develop a children's story. You could do a column in TAO to have children's stories from all over the country, because I think that's an area that's totally overlooked and is readily available. A lot of ministers would be glad to have you do a children's story occasionally. It's not always the favorite thing on the minister's list to come up with something. So the rest of these I will skip over because they're pretty obvious. And I want to come back to ecumenical events. I don't see a lot of this happening at the moment, but whenever I've asked members of our chapter, who in your community is a pianist playing in church, or who in your community is an organist that isn't a member of the AGO, I always get these blank looks. No one seems to know who's playing in their churches right beside them anymore. So I think we need to get back to holding meetings locally and getting all the musicians in a particular city or town together. Used to be that always happened for the ecumenical Thanksgiving service at the very least. And I don't know if those are still happening or not. We do it in Westford still. But having a joint choir or service or a hymn sing, or in Westford, we do a concert at the beginning of every December for the food bank. And that's a combined choir thing. So the AGO should be involved in these, and we should use these as a way to find out who the other musicians are and to get to know them and come up with a list. It's been fairly difficult to actually find out who's in area churches, because a lot of the churches are closed these days, so you can't just call them. This is just, I'm going to put in a few things along the way to illustrate. This is Richard McVeigh online, does virtual church, another whole approach, and he's had a lot of luck with people from all over the world, quite frankly. And this is actually his home console hooked up to Hauptwerk, but he does things every week and gets, this is quite old, but it shows he has 133 subscribers, but this is from quite a while ago. And then lastly, on the church area, I think we need to be honest with ourselves and recognize burnout. It happens to all of us. I know I've been burnt out a few times, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to take a break from churches, and I found that to be very helpful. And ministers have retreat centers to handle that. If you need to, you can go to a retreat center, and I'm thinking National AGO should develop something similar for musicians, where you could go for a few days and talk to someone and try to recover if you have a bad experience at church and need to recover from burnout or whatever. So those are a bunch of ideas all around the church that I think would all do well to push the organ forward more in the church. But as I say, it is going to be a hard slog until the church sort of figures out their own problems and turns things around. The organ can't carry the church. So let's move on to the internet, which is a much more optimistic topic. So on the internet, we can do a lot of research on the internet. Most of you are familiar with that. What I like the internet for is I can hear a lot of different interpretations of a piece, and I discover a lot of music that I just didn't, I kind of knew it existed, but I had never researched it, and you could just all of a sudden come across a piece and take a few minutes to listen to it. But what I really like is this first-time experience that I talked about last week. If I want to learn a piece and I spend a couple of weeks or a couple of months learning a piece, obviously I think it's a great piece at the end of that because I've just spent this time learning it inside and out. So obviously I like it. Last week I talked about how we like what we know. Um, but going to YouTube, for instance, and just listening to the piece for the first time, out of the blue, already finished and polished and up there, really gives you a much better idea of what that first time experience is going to be like for the non-musically trained ear. So that I think is a great way to get back to that first time experience. Because the minute you start playing, you start putting all of that science of music onto what you're playing. So maybe we need to have a workshop on how to research online and how to do these things. I think there's a lot of other places that you can research online and take advantage of. But more importantly, the internet is a populous gateway for most people. And this, I think, is the most important thing. The organ is being discovered on the internet. You know, Anna Lapwood has 1 million followers, and Paul Fay has hundreds of thousands of followers, and Lucas Hassler, and Richard McVeigh, and many others. Um, so we are influencing people on massive scale, and this is where we're really using the new tools to full advantage. And the internet, YouTube in particular, but it could be Spotify, it could be TikTok, it could be anything. It really levels the playing field. So anyone can get on there. Anyone, you just decide for yourself what you like, what you want to listen to. There is no elitist gatekeeper, which I mentioned last week, that says, "Oh, you can't listen to this, and that's terrible," and keeps you from hearing this. And it's a new way to connect with people. And I think we need to see it as a new location for the organ, just alongside the church and the home and the concert hall. The internet is a place where people go to listen to the organ. And I know people who, you know, have Amazon Prime or Spotify, and they're listening to the organ just as they would Taylor Swift. You know, you can just get the music. It doesn't have to be YouTube. So we need to treat it as something very distinct. And it by that, we need to go from Internet 101 to Internet 401. And I alluded to that at the very opening. You know, Internet 101 is where we just put up a camera in a worship service and we put that on the internet, or we put a camera up in a concert and we put it on the internet. And quite frankly, that's very boring. Um, so the new generation that I just mentioned, they actually program for the internet. You know, they talk directly to the audience. They have a program, different types of things that they do. Paul Fay here goes around to all these churches and explains what he finds exciting about the organ. And the interesting thing is, the people who are watching find it exciting too. So there's that match between what he's saying and what they're experiencing, which is why he has such credibility. When he puts something up, he can get, in this case, these are all kind of old, but you know, he had 11,000 views within 24 hours of a post. We would be well advised to see that as a good thing and to figure out what he's doing and to maybe try and do that ourselves. But he always figures something to make it very interesting and gets others interested as well. So we need to up our game on the internet, realize that this is a whole new venue, so to speak. So maybe we need workshops on how to plan, record, and post online, something beyond just putting a camera up. Maybe how to edit. We need a workshop on how to promote and advertise these. All of these people, you know, on YouTube, you can promote particular posts so they get noticed more. You can pay to advertise so it shows up automatically on those ads that you all hate. But you know, and I hate them too, but I refuse to pay monthly to get rid of them. But you know, if you're a organ guy and you come across something that suddenly is the organ, you don't hate it anymore. You say, "Oh, I'm interested in that," and that's the whole idea. You skip everything else, and we don't know much. I've started looking into that a little, but have not had time to really do a lot with it. But maybe these workshops need to be led by a media company, and we say, "Hey, go look at Anna Lapwood and Paul Fay and Richard McVeigh and Lucas Hassler and a few others and come back and tell us how to do that kind of stuff." Maybe that's a national project or chapters, we need to band together and do that together. Because we really need to get on top of this and take our game to a higher level on the internet. Um, Maybe we need to get together as a group, just like they have people getting together to watch a sports game as a group. Maybe we need to get together and watch different postings and discuss it and see what the format is and how it went. I always like to compare this to televised sport. So to up our game, they have instant playback, commentators to explain what's going on. They speak to the audience. That's not unlike Anna Lapwood and Paul that talk about what the experience is when she's playing the concert. And that's what people like. They want, as if they're sitting right there next to you on the bench and what's it like to do this? Or TV angles, not just the keyboard and the pedals. That's sort of old-fashioned these days. Go inside the organ, look at the pipes, take a look at the whole building, see the whole picture, something to make it very exciting. And then shortened versions. There is so much dead time in a concert or a worship service. Maybe we should do the little half-hour version that takes out all that dead time. You can now get a 2-hour baseball game that cuts out all of the time they've spent arguing about the call and everything else. And that just goes to the lack of our ability to concentrate and focus that long. But these are all things that are today's environment. And rather than fight it, we need to accept it and make the best of it and flourish under it. So YouTube obviously is a big part of online. And through YouTube and the others, organ is becoming part of the popular culture again. It used to just be a little just for the organists. But now we're attracting millions. And it takes showmanship to do that. And while I'm hardly a showman, or a show person, I should say, I guess. There are some who are natural show people, and we should go with that and let them be showmen. They all have a very down-to-earth attitude. All the people I interviewed, I was amazed. They were all so down-to-earth. They had such a populist approach from the audience. They put the audience first, and it shows. It's very authentic. And that's really having a influence on the organ around the world. We should share their excitement. So recognizing that this online stuff is a gateway to live music. A lot of people I've talked to are afraid that, well, they're going to watch it online and they won't go to a concert anymore. And what we're finding is absolutely the opposite of that. And, we had to find our way through. But now, invite these people to give a concert. Anna Lapwood's playing up in Portland next May for Mother's Day, and the auditorium's over half sold out already. I haven't checked recently, it's probably 3/4 by now. You all probably know that she gave a concert in Cologne and had 13,000 people show up to see it. Well, it's not quite Taylor Swift yet, but it's getting close enough. And it's certainly a lot better than what we have. And that's what we need for it to become popular again. We need to do more of this, and we need to support those what I call phenoms that have the backing up there. We also could do workshops on new repertoire using online resources. So there are a lot of people who are self-publishing now on the internet. And unless you go and find them, you won't know about them. But what I like about the self-publishers is they almost all put up a recording of their piece, so you can hear it before you download it. What a novel idea. That is so great. Not only can I hear the finished product and know whether it's accessible music, and I'm excited by it, but I can also just confirm that, one, I can play it, and two, I want to play it. So we could have people research that, and go find someone who's self-publishing and look at the pieces and do a little workshop on the ones they like the most. And then I really like this drop the needle idea. I have to say, without being too negative, there are times when I will do a new composition, and the minute I tell someone who composed it, it's an immediate bias. Oh, that's not going to be any good. Yet, there have been a few times when I've played, typically practicing ahead of time, and I played a piece and people come up, oh, that was absolutely beautiful. Who did that? And for them to hear it without knowing who composed it first is, first of all, another first-time experience, but it's just a wonderful way to get past the bias. So you could have a group of people come together and you drop the needle, so to speak, in the old music history days, and you just play a piece without any idea of who composed it and what the piece is, and just have people talk about it and decide whether they like it or not. So those are all things that could happen. So let's move on to the home instrument. I think I'm doing pretty well on time. We're going to come out right about where I want to. Um, so when I was growing up, people would have these little electronic organs at home, typically the split manual keyboard with, one octave of pedals and things. But they were the center of attention, so to speak, that or a piano, when people would go there. And then we lost all of that. But now Hauptwerk has made the organ much more accessible again. So for a little less than $10,000, you can have a beginning two-manual Hauptwerk instrument that just has so many possibilities. And if you really want to, you could do it for just a few $1,000s. So I'm going to actually skip here and come back. So if you look on the internet, you will find a lot of these kinds of pictures. This one on the right I just came across, and someone who's put together a couple of MIDI keyboards and a pedal board and a bench, and he put that all up together using Hauptwerk. And so those keyboards go for a few $100s each. And who knows, he may have gotten the used one from some band or something. And the one on the left is actually someone who came to the Methuen Open Console the last 2 years, and this is what he's been using to learn the organ. And, some of us turn up our nose at these things, but this is not, a lot of people begin on the piano with a little electronic piano too. It's not the end of the world. And this is all grassroots interest. And from my perspective, if someone goes to the trouble of figuring this all out and putting this together, they're interested in the organ. And by golly, we ought to recognize that and respect that and get them organ lessons. What teenager will go to the trouble of putting this together that isn't really interested in the organ? And there's a lot of them out there that are doing this, and they just need some help getting lessons, and they'll upgrade to a better organ as time goes along. This is just a beginning point. So the home instrument is engaging people in all new ways. Some of them want to learn MIDI or electronics or how computers work, or they just like the organ or what streaming's all about. But if you're trying to learn the organ, having a home instrument probably doubles and triples your practice time. So let's face it, if you've got to go to the organ and to the church to practice, you're probably talking a few times a week. And in the middle of the winter when there's no heat, it probably isn't very conducive to good practicing. But it also means you don't need an education to get started. I want to give you two examples from the Methuen Open Console we just had. So 2 years ago, we do an open console every year of Methuen, and I'm always over there and I'm keeping my eye out for people, and we always have some young people come through, and I always make it a point to talk to them, because those are the people, we want to get going on. So 2 years ago, we had a person come in, probably 14 years old or so, and he had signed up for a 15-minute slot, and we asked him what he wanted to play, and he said, well, I'm going to do the Bach Passacaglia. So we kind of looked at each other and said, well, this ought to be interesting. And he got up there, and Fred MacArthur's registering, because he does all the registration. That guy did the Bach Passacaglia. He didn't do the fugue, but he did the Passacaglia, and it sounded great. Learned it all on his own. No teacher. So we hooked him up with a teacher at Worcester, and he's doing wonderfully. And he came this year to play again, and he's making great progress. We also had another guy that showed up at probably about the same age 2 years ago, and he is sort of out in the boondocks, and So we talked to him and his parents about getting organ lessons. He had learned hymns because that's what he had knew from church. And you know, he didn't have organ shoes or anything, but he was hitting the pedals right and in his sockets and everything. And I tried to get him hooked up to a teacher last year, but it just didn't work out, and there were financial problems and things. But he came back this year. So I think we're going to be successful this year in getting him hooked up with a teacher. But this instrument on the left is his practice. He has had no teacher at all. He's just self-taught. But he played the hymns very well. Good fingering, legato, pedals, the whole 9 yards. And if he has that much interest, he deserves to be given lessons and to be supported and move ahead. There are a lot of people like that have grassroots interest in the organ at home, and we need to tie into that. There are also many concert organists that have hopped work at home. They may not admit it, but I've talked to many that I come across. And now the instrument, if it's at home, becomes a social instrument. And so one of the people we have like 8 scholarships this year in Worcester. We just have a lot of young people coming out of the woodwork. And one of them applied, and I was talking to his father as part of the process, and he happened to say, well, you know, he has a friend too that's come over and gotten interested in the organ. So now we picked him up as a student as well. So there's a lot more of that social interaction going on with an instrument at home. And then, of course, when people come over, you just have to play the organ for them. So there's all kinds of advertising and attention getting. So this is a huge area that I think we are not paying anywhere near enough attention to. And what else can we do? Well, first of all, I'm working on building a group of people in Worcester that are willing to help those who want to build an organ at home. I've got 2 people that are interested in doing that. Why not help them so they don't have to learn from scratch every time, make the same mistakes we all made trying to put together an instrument. And as I said, the practice instrument is one of the biggest impediments for students. So I'm working now, we haven't made any decisions yet, but I'm working with maybe having the chapter purchase an instrument and leasing it back to the student. You know, maybe $100 a month or something. It would eventually pay for itself, but it's a way of getting an organ out there where the student might not have an instrument to practice on. Our scholarship committee is finding that finding an instrument for a student to use to practice on is more difficult than finding a teacher or anything else these days. So maybe we purchase one or more of them and put them in a central place. Maybe a church that's open is willing to let students come and use it. We haven't figured that all out yet, but I think one way or the other we need to somehow encourage students to be able to get their own practice instrument and get them involved. Maybe we need a user group for hopped work or for electronic organs to support that. Most of you have probably seen The Loft. It's about to go live. As Dean, I've had advance access to it for a couple of weeks now, and I've already started a thread for hopped work users, and we've already had 7 or 8 people reply to that. But we also need to advertise in different places. You know, I wonder where all these kids are getting their MIDI keyboards. And a lot of them are probably going to the guitar store or some other music store and picking them up. So maybe we should be putting a poster up there and saying, hey, if you're buying a MIDI keyboard for an organ, give us a call and we'll help you. Have a workshop to build a hopped work instrument. We did that out in Western Massachusetts. I believe Cal Juilliard is on this call. He's the dean of Western Massachusetts, and he brought a hopped work instrument, and I went out there one Saturday and we put it together as a group. There was a lot of interest in that. And then he went one step further, and he had one of the members give a concert on that home instrument. And he can correct me, but I believe there were something like 40 people that showed up, or 50 people for that concert at his home. It was in the summer, so some of them could sit outside on the deck and still hear the organ. So this whole idea of the salon instrument, what we used to know as the salon instrument, a home instrument, becomes possible and is a huge way to push the organ forward. Last but not least, we come to the concert hall. Concert halls are going strong relative to the church anyway, and they don't have all the church baggage associated with it. They typically are tied in as a hub of activity to youth orchestras and music lessons and everything. I know Groton Hill has over 2,000 students associated with the campus, lots of both adults and children coming in. Um, and they're beginning to recognize the organ. I was very pleased to read the review in the Musical Intelligencer about the Boston Symphony Hall organ concert this last weekend, I guess it was. I wasn't able to go myself, but it looked like it was a success. He thought maybe up to 400 people might have been there, which is what we can get at Groton Hill typically. But concert halls are beginning to recognize and accept the challenge of getting the organ out there again. So I get 2 organ concerts a year that I can plan at Groton Hill, and typically I play with the orchestra twice a year. We have Mechanics Hall in Worcester, we have Hanover Theater, we have Shanklin, we have Providence Performing Arts. We have quite a bit of activity in the area around the organ, and I think we need a lot more of that. The attendance, the audience for the concert hall is quite different than a church audience. And as I say, it's a way of getting the organ out there again and building a new image for the organ outside of the church, and then it will influence the church as well. It's amazing how many people come to the concerts at Groton Hill or Methuen, wherever, and I just never heard an organ sound like this. I didn't have any idea that the organ could play this kind of music. Their only image is what they get in church, which may be bad, may be good, but given how many churches there are, most of it is probably not too good, or if at all. So we need to do a lot more with the concert hall, and of course Anna Lapwood is the most famous resident organist these days with her 8,500 seats that she fills out at the Royal Albert Hall. She plays with any group that wants to play with the organ. Pop group, rock group, whatever. You can see smoke flying, and she's all excited by it, and the people just love it. They're all yelling and screaming and going wild with the organ. And we think, oh, how terrible, people are talking while we play. Well, how exciting. That's the new thing. They're just totally turned on. And she's turned them into these midnight sessions, and she's released CDs and everything, and has really taken it to new levels, which is exactly what we need. So I think we need to do more organ plus things, organ plus instruments, all the way up to orchestra. And it needs to become part of that popular culture again. We're on the way. That's part of the upstream of where we're going. We need to stress how different it is from the church and what the repertoire is. And again, transcriptions are typically popular on these kinds of concerts, especially if the audience typically is an orchestral audience. But I think we need to invert the ratio. I think in the past we've had like 5 intellectual pieces and maybe 1 exciting piece into a concert. We need to make that 1 challenge piece and 5 accessible pieces. And the same thing, old music to new. Instead of 5 pieces of old repertoire and 1 contemporary piece, we need to make it 1 old and 5 newer pieces. That have a fresh sound and are accessible again, would be my vote. We need to put the audience first, as I say, find someone totally disconnected from music and get their feedback, honest feedback. And the telltale signs, if they clap after the first movement, that's a good sign. It means they're excited. Don't stop it. I don't know how many of you looked at Anna Lapwood's release on YouTube of her concert at Trinity Church, Wall Street. It went up on YouTube, and then when I went back to finish listening to it, it disappeared. So I think they may have taken it down. But after like the second piece, she got off the bench, and I thought it was great. She said, I just want to go on record that I'm so happy that all the children are here and that I don't mind at all if they make a little noise. And she said, truth be told, I can drown them out if I want to anyway. And everyone laughed and clapped and thought that was great. We need to get more of that involved and not be so worried about ourselves and put the audience first, that we need to expose the children to the organ just as much as the adults. And as I started out, the introductions, things that we need to do when we talk about music is talk about it more as the experience. What's the experience they're about to have, and how can you explain it to make that experience better? It needs to be more emotional and accessible. And then we need to engage in conversation. All of these people, Anna Lapwood, Paul Fye, they all stay for an hour and a half after the concert and talk with people, and they'll have the kids come up and play the organ after the concert. In fact, there's a YouTube of that at Trinity where some little kid, must have been no more than 10 years old, got up and played the Vidor Fifth and did a very good job of it, pretty flawlessly. So we need to do that. And I always look for young people in concerts. If you have a young person at a concert, there's got to be a reason. So I always say, are you studying the organ, or are you interested in the organ? And try and engage them and their parents, and point them in the right direction to getting lessons and everything. But those are the people we should be looking for. So concert hall, I think, has a lot of potential. I'm getting to the end, don't worry, we're getting there. So I actually came across this concert truck outside of Hanover Theater in Worcester a couple of years ago. I was attending a concert there, and I walked out, and lo and behold, here was this truck. It was like 9:30 at night, and they had timed it so they knew when the concert was over, and they started playing. That's an electronic piano in there with speakers, and they were advertising an upcoming concert. And everyone stopped to listen. It was quite the thing. And I just think, how cool would it be? They travel all over the country. I went up and checked it out. You can actually book them, and they'll come and travel and do the advertising for, a few days or a week, wherever you want. And they can set up pretty much anywhere. They have their own generator. But wouldn't it be cool if National had a Hauptwerk inside a truck like this, and just carried it around and parked it outside of wherever there's going to be a concert or the park or whatever, and suddenly you had this wonderful organ music playing. And it wasn't tacky at all. They were playing classical music, and it sounded quite nice. And it's very engaging. So creative ideas are coming around. I don't spend too much time on this, except a lot of people I find just don't look at the complete package of concerts. What's the traffic and parking like, and are you giving advice to the people that might come on the best place to park, and do you greet them and mingle with them beforehand? What's the vibe? Is it an informal thing where they can ask questions, and are they staying around afterwards to talk with you or the artist? And what's it like trying to get home? And I think we just need to be much more welcoming and aware. We need to put the audience first if we want to get somewhere. And as I get ready to close out, don't be afraid of the shiny glitter. At the beginning of each wave that I talked about, there was always more secular, popular approach to music before it started getting serious. And that's kind of the whole idea. You have to start somewhere, and then the musicians tend to take it and turn it into much more music and more advanced music as the wave builds to a crest. We didn't all start out as being Bach back in those days, and we didn't all start out being Vidor and Vienne or Duraflé or whatever. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Lemons was there, and Lefebvre Bailey was there, and they got people excited about the organ, and it doesn't mean that's the way it's always going to be. So if you look back over, Arthur Fiedler did this with the Boston Pops, and Virgil Fox, and all of these people. They were show people, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean you have to be, but we don't have to put them down. They got a lot of people involved. So I think that is necessary at the beginning of the wave in order to get things started. And we just need to build on that success, and it will lead to better things. So how will the blank slate develop? Here are all the things that I just, not all of them, but many of the things. It'll be interesting to see over the next 20, 50 years Generally speaking, a wave, the way I see it, it takes about 150 years, and we're um, not even 100 years into it yet. So this is all going to come out of the current situation and all the pressures that are around us, but hopefully we can look at it in a popular way and move ahead with things. So my parting comment is that the organ is not dying. Only the modern and postmodern age of the organ is fading away, and a new era is emerging, located on the internet and streaming to the world. So with that, thank you for attending, and we'll have time for discussion. I didn't do too bad. You've still got 15 or 20 minutes. Hopefully I still have people on the call. I
Right.
can't see who's there.
Yeah, they're here. They're here. So I'm just going to mention to folks, if they have questions, if you could, just so we can try to do this orderly, if you go down to the React button at the bottom of your screen, it looks like a heart. It's the reactions panel. Kel has found it already with the thumbs up, which is great. You can raise your hand there, and then we can just try to do this, just to make sure I don't miss anybody. But I wanted to start with a couple of comments. First of all, Randy, thank you for this. This was a tremendous amount of work that you put into this both nights. That was a gargantuan effort. You are a treasure to the national organization, and I consider you an honorary member, of Boston. We welcome you anytime.
Well, actually, I'm an actual member of Boston too, so
Well,
I'm a
and I
dual
mean,
member.
the mass chapters, I should say,
Uh,
across the state. Um, and it reminds me, and I appreciate your school of thought too, that that organs and organists are not going the way of the dinosaurs. That we're actually coming out of a trough, heading towards a new crest, which I think is a very encouraging sentiment. And for those that read the TAO this month, David Vogels, who has a monthly commentary, he wrote this month, and I wrote it down because I want to make sure I got it right. Even as the number of university organ majors in the U.S. is gradually declining, the quality of performance by young organists has never been higher. And I think
yes.
that was a very encouraging statement by him as well too. And then he kind of went on and talked about some of the programs that some of the chapters offer. Of course, the emerging artists and the pedals, pipes, and pizza, so many other things. And then the comments in the articles, your interviews with Richard and Anna and Paul were extremely encouraging as well too, and their use of social media and engaging these, maybe this next generation of players is very encouraging. So I wrote down these ideas, and it gave me a lot to think about just in my own church, trying to involve more kids. But the issues of the master classes, the um, repertoire club, the community recitals, outreach to that New England Piano Teachers Association is something worth exploring as well. So I took a lot out of this. I really appreciate your time, and we do have time for comments and questions too. So if anybody wants to jump in, please feel free. We'll start with Marjorie. Just unmute yourself.
I just wanted to have Randy mention what Peter Krasinski is doing in Worcester with the concept of bringing music to where people are. If there's an event at Mechanics Hall, he will be willing to be there at any time of the evening or whatever, just to give them an introduction to the organ, even though it might be a society of dentists or some other total group that's going on. Isn't that right, Randy?
Yes, I don't know all the details, but Peter is a great ambassador for the organ, and he has been so willing to get people involved at Mechanics Hall, and has made,
Well,
and they do that noontime with lunch, which I didn't mention that, but that's a great idea, and they practically fill the bottom of Mechanics Hall and some in the balcony for those concerts. It's
but
fabulous.
as you were talking, it made me think of a time that I was asked to play a piece before a bell choir concert at a great big regional convention. Now those don't happen in the same manner anymore. But I had never received applause by 600 people to the degree those kids all applauded, and I thought to myself at that moment, this was really bright because a lot of these kids maybe they've heard a church organist at home, but sometimes we have to take the music where something else is happening, is my point.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
Methuen also brings in all of the fourth graders from Methuen every year. They bus them in. It takes 2 days with many busloads. but we do a presentation to them on the organ and the hall itself. So all of the fourth graders get exposed, and we could do that across the country too. And it really doesn't take much to organize that. Other questions?
Yeah, Cal?
Yeah, I was very interested in your popular hymns idea. I actually tried this at a church about a year ago, and I didn't even know where to find what are the popular hymns. So I'm wondering if you could talk about what makes a hymn popular in your definition. I saw that question in the chat, and also how do we find these without having to learn a whole new genre of music?
Well, by definition, it may be a new genre of music just because we don't know them. But it is true that popular hymns are different in different churches. If you go to, a Baptist church, the popular hymns are probably going to be different than an Episcopal church. It's whatever, that's where the survey comes in. If you're the director of music at a church, it would behoove you to kind of know what your congregation likes to sing and have a handle on that. Instead of trying to dictate what they ought to like to sing. So popular, the word popular in that sense means within the environment of the church, of the people you're at, and what they enjoy to sing. And hymn sings used to be the way to find that out, because all the popular hymns got asked to be sung right away, so you could find that out. What might be more important, not just the popular hymns, but the difficult hymns. And by difficult, I mean hymns that, typically have a folk tune, maybe meant to be played with a guitar or a praise band or something, and not easily, it's not just a four-part harmony that we're used to on hymns. But there are ways to deal with that, but a lot of people have difficulty doing that. We're not all master transcriptionists and things. So it's a matter, most of us just run to the piano and play it on the piano as sort of a way around it, but I think it would be helpful as a chapter if we gave people ways to do it on the organ without them having to write it out and figure it out for themselves. So that's what I mean by difficult hymns. But I don't think there's any one master list of popular hymns. I've asked the whole chapter. Every time I see them the last couple of times, I say, bring your popular or difficult hymns, and I've only got 6 or 7 so far. We need to widen the scope of that. Does that make sense?
Can I ask what those 6 or 7 are? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, I just happen to have a little packet here that I've been collecting. One person gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. In Christ Alone, Open the Eyes of My Heart, 10,000 Reasons, Mighty to Save, Shout to the Lord, Blessed be your name, Even So Come. Someone else gave me, We Are Marching in the Light of God. That's a difficult one rhythmically. All the Riches of His Grace, Jan Harrington. All Are Welcome. So I don't know if that rings a bell with anyone, but that's just sort of a beginning. I think there are plenty of them. Everywhere we go, we talk about people who, all these hymns that they can't play on the organ very well. Does that make sense? Who asked that question?
It was me, Kathy.
Oh, Kathy.
I was just curious. Yeah.
Right. Well, you probably have a separate list at your church too of what you're asked to play that might fall into that category.
Well, I get to choose what I play, so yeah.
Okay. So do you deliberately exclude the ones that are difficult to play, or?
No, I try not to exclude anything, but for us, I'm a proponent of, always having the sheet music available. So if we can't have the sheet music available, we don't do it if we're expecting the congregation to sing. And we haven't yet figured out a way to get, if I make it up on MuseScore and I make up the sheet music, we haven't figured out a way to get that into our soft copy of our bulletin. So I can print it out into our hard copy and it can look fine, but we've been trying to get away from having so many paper copies of the bulletin. So if you're looking at it from a QR code with your phone, it tends to get blurry when you load it up into Google Docs. So all of that is a long thing to say that we tend to do what's in our hymnal, and until we can figure out that how to get over that
We should talk
obstacle.
about that sometime. Seems like that, from being a computer guy, it seems like that should be solvable. So,
That's what I've thought too, and it's Google Docs makes it not. So
very
anyway,
interesting.
but yeah.
Okay, well, that's good insight. Yeah, I don't claim to have all the answers here. It's just we're all along the path trying to figure it out. Other
Any questions or
questions?
comments?
I can't believe it all made sense, and you all totally
Well,
are in
you
agreement.
gave us a lot to think about.
I did.
There's a lot of content there. So I will just reiterate again that this will be published on our YouTube channel, thanks to our editor in chief, Kathy. And then also, you mentioned the loft, and actually, I jumped on there today because I was curious, and I saw your post, Randy. That is a great resource for the AGO. It has that that feed, that discussion board, which I think is going to be very helpful. We have something somewhat similar in our chapter. It's a list server, which is available. It's a free service for members, and it's basically an email-based system where you can ask a question. It'll go to everybody that's registered. If folks here are members, you can find out more about it at our website and subscribe there. And that's been very helpful for us in the chapter. Is another way to reach out to people. Final thoughts?
I'm incredibly impressed by the depth of what Randy's done tonight.
Oh, thank you. It's very near and dear to my heart, as you probably can tell, and
I can't tell at all.
I have been thinking about it for a long time. Every
Really.
time I have a run-in with a church, I rethink the whole thing and try and figure out what happened and what went wrong and what could we have done to change the outcome, so to speak. And
I think your comment about the hymns is, whether consciously or not, ties back to your whole idea of how do you engage people on more than just this diode level of I play and you listen. Because hymns are all doing stuff together. At the event for Barbara Owen at the hall yesterday, for me, the best music was the hymns. Not just because Fred's a great hymn player, but because we were all doing it together. Right. And so every piece of everything that you said is about more people getting involved in the experience and not just being passive. So that's the theme I'm taking away, is to always be conscious of that and not just assume that more automatic connection between all the people engaged in a musical event.
yeah, no, that's great. It's a good comment. Dr. Baker always told us that the hymns were the music of the people first when it came to hymns. Yeah.
He also said, "What is the proper position of the swell box?" And the answer was
Yeah.
in motion.
Yeah. We won't go there. Well,
I,
I would
thank you all.
say,
Yeah, go
could
ahead.
I ask one more question?
Yeah, you
Um,
still got 10 minutes.
part of the issue in our chapter is member engagement. And I've tried a bunch of things, including workshops, and I'm wondering, the ideas you've presented are so inspiring, but is anyone else having difficulty engaging the sort of larger group of our members to sort of come together to support initiatives like this?
That's where I think the burnout comes in. You know, for instance, it's disappointing that we have 15 people here out of 300 members between all of our chapters, and here we are talking about the future of our profession, and we only get 15. Yes, there'll be more that look at it afterwards, but if you look at it from that point, it has to be frustrating to have all these things and not have people actually be interested enough to engage with it. But I think some people are just burnt out. They're tired. They've hit their head against the wall so often, which is why I think the retreat center might be a good idea to resuscitate. I would be there if I didn't have the ability to actually just leave the church for a few years and put it all behind me and then come back later with a new attitude. And not everyone has that luxury of being able to do those things, but probably starting my own business was the thing that kept me sane all these years, because if I had to only play in church and that was my only source of income, I probably would have gone crazy by now with all the problems. So I think part of the ability to engage is just people having the energy and the vision, which is why I'm trying to be positive and inspire people to do it. And I think if you look at the young people, yes, they play beautifully. They are truly more talented. Some of that becomes because of the tools that they have that we didn't have. But they also have the enthusiasm. They have that young enthusiasm and exuberance because they haven't been chewed up in the church yet. And that sometimes is what it takes to get across and come up. I'm very hopeful in that generation that they're going to just stand up and carry the day. And then some people just they're working and they're just, these days work is a 60, 70 hour a week job, and it's hard. But my whole approach to doing that is to get people excited. So as I find people, I find out what they're interested in. Like I've got 2 people interested in helping people build Hauptwerk instruments, and other people interested in the organ crawls, and just put them to work and split it up into smaller pieces as a way to try to get that going. And I think we're getting successful in Worcester. We're getting more involvement and people willing to take on different cases. But we have a long way to go yet.
Young people, they haven't been chewed up yet. Use the term "yet" as if it's a foregone conclusion, and I think a lot of us have unfortunately experienced that. And one of the things you touched on this too is JW in his article says a lot. He kind of reminds us that most of the members are part time, or the quintessential weekend organists with a lot of other things going on, and maybe don't have the time to kind of go above and beyond with some of this. But I thought personally, my retreat center is going to chapter events. That's my way of kind of stepping out and just being able to take a deep breath. And it's happened more than once where I just don't feel like going back out on a Sunday or maybe a weeknight to a chapter event, and I just maybe a little bit run down, and I push myself to go. As a member of the executive committee in particular, I want to support the work that we do, and every single time I'm glad I did, because I come back feeling more refreshed than when I left the house. Every single time that happens, and I think if we can try to engage people to come to chapter events too, start there. Start local.
I agree.
Forward.
Yeah, Sean, I have to piggyback on that because the dinners with the dean that Kathy has begun have been enormously successful, and those who have attended them tend to come to more events after they attend one of those social events. And that's fine. It's getting us together. I like the idea too, Randy, of a retreat center. And especially when people have come up against the wall. And we have 2 more roundtables in Boston this year. We had the first one with Christine Hogan. And it's just an opportunity to talk about how the workplace has changed, especially in the church. And some of the deep need for healing was apparent at the first meeting. It was not, however, a gripe session. I came away feeling much more hopeful than when I went in. And there are 2 more of those. There's one in January and one in April.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I think we do first Thursday lunches, which have been very, very successful. And we've started doing evening dinners for what I call SOWO, south of Worcester. We have 10 or 12 at that event too. So it is very therapeutic as well. Yeah, I agree. Other people, you got 5 minutes left. I'm a stickler, start on time and end on time.
Charlene from the Cape and Islands has just put in a comment to the chat.
I'm getting down there.
Yeah, thanks. Good things to think about. So much takes time, even with great resources, and musicians are stretched very thin these days. Social events seem more popular than performance or education opportunities in our chapter. a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, actually, the one right before that, Marjorie, you put that in. That's very great too. I
Mm.
heard an appropriate quote of Maya Angelou's words, which she's paraphrasing. People won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did. They will remember how you made them feel. That's sort
Mhm.
of that whole emotional approach to things. Yeah, very true.
People also
Well,
remember when they aren't heard,
yes, absolutely. We need to listen.
and they know it. I think of this particularly with the recent death of Judith Hancock, how many people passed by her to get to her husband and how that would have made her feel.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson, because she remained extremely graceful under those circumstances when this was very challenging.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I thank you all for engaging so much and being supportive. I wasn't sure what the reaction would be, but encourage people to go listen to these recordings and come up with other ideas and get inspired and get involved.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Randy.
Sean. Leave it to
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you from
Thank
us.
you.